Okay, we're in the very long Simon chapter 80 in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, learning the laws, different laws of the Lamitas Melachos, the 39 prohibitions of things, of works that we're not supposed to be doing, we're prohibited from doing on the Shabbos. Let's bring up the text. So, okay, here we go. We are holding law number 12. Last week we discussed different peel foods that have shells or peels, fruits or vegetables. So the different laws about eating, let's say, nuts or seeds, sunflower seeds with the seeds. What's the halacha according to the Alter Rebbe, according to the Siddur we have in Chabad, the Alter Rebbe who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, so he has the Code of Jewish Law, and then he has some final rulings that he sometimes will change according to what's in the Siddur. In the back of the Siddur, there's some laws regarding the laws of Shabbos. So, but in the basic idea, foods, first of all, shells there's a difference if the shell or the covering is connected or loose. There becomes a problem we're going to see when there's foods when there's peels that are totally no connection. They're totally psolas. There's no use for them. Certain parts of food, whether even animals could eat them. But in general, the general rule is that as long as you're going to eat normal foods like oranges, etc., and you peel it by hand, using a peeler is not allowed on Shabbos. But if you can use by hand, so then you could peel the oranges and or the bananas, what have you, and eat the fruit because it's all part of the food, and then gets also a lot of the peels could be used. Animals can eat them. And so as long as you're eating it right away and you're doing it by hand. But if you're going to prepare food, let's say, then there's a problem. And same thing, the only really complicated part is really eggs. To peel hard-boiled eggs, if you want to make egg salad, so you have to peel it right before you make the egg salad. So we're going to get back to all this. Let's try to go forward in the halachas themselves. I made a few summaries of the laws when it comes to peeling. I just don't want to send it out yet until I get an approval from a rabbi. Okay, let's talk about another question, which is complicated. Squeezing fruits on Shabbos. So you're not allowed to juice on Shabbos. For instance, you can't squeeze an orange to pour it into a cup of to make orange juice on Shabbos. That's prohibited. The question really only comes to if you can if it's allowed to if you're allowed to squeeze foods into foods, not for coloring or drinking, but for part of the food. Like for instance, the question obviously comes up with lemons. Can you squeeze a lemon into a salad on Shabbos or on top of a piece of salmon? So it says like this: Aser lischait peiros l'tzarech hamashkin. To squeeze fruits just for the mashkin, just for the liquids, so to say, like to drink the juice, is prohibited on Shabbos. That's not allowed. See the footnotes on that. V'chein aser lischait limonim. He says limonim are citron. So lemon is the reason why lemon is singled out is because the question is lemon itself a straight up drink, or does it get turned into lemon juice, mixed lemon and water, etc. So you could squeeze. So it says it's also prohibited to squeeze a lemon into letocha mayim, into the water. Let's laase smashke shekarin lemonada, to turn it into lemonade. So that's prohibited, to squeeze a lemon into lemonade. Now, in that is included. We're going to learn later when we get to the second parts of this course of studying the law. We're going to learn that even slicing lemons into tea is prohibited on Shabbos. Hold on, my mouse is, let me let Ariel in. But lemon, to turn into lemonade, even just pouring into water. So seemingly, what it means to squeeze oranges and make straight up 100% pure orange juice, that's for sure not allowed. One would think maybe if I squeeze the lemon into the water, it's like squeezing lemon into food. It says no, that's considered a drink, not a food, and therefore it's prohibited. But I feel limtzos pri befiv, even to suck juice separately out by your mouth, to take, let's say, an orange and just suck out the juice. Yesh Oisrim, there are those who prohibit it. Yesh Lihizar al Kapanim Banavim, specifically be careful of sucking out the juice of grapes. Shalei limtzais as hamashke v'lizrek es aklipos. Not turn the liquid to suck out the juice and throw out the klipa. Again, it's becoming a problem with barer and psilas and leftovers. But what happens if you don't need the liquids? You're not squeezing it because you want the liquids. For instance, an example would be squeezing lettuce or something that you're not looking to drink lettuce juice. You're just trying to get out. Mutter l'seichel, then you're permitted to squeeze it. Mutter lischait chasa. Chasa is salad, which is lettuce. V'kishuim, or cucumbers. Milafefonim. Gurken. Shamayim ha'elchim l'ibud, because the liquids that you're taking out is not for you to drink, but it's just going to go to waste. So it's to squeeze and juice for drinking. And again, everything depends on the minhag hamakom also. If people are making cucumber juice and things like that, then it's a problem. We're talking about it in a way. That was just a boom, though I didn't hear a siren. So nevertheless, that is prohibited. Okay, let's see the footnotes. It says forbidden to squeeze fruit, number 45. This is considered mefarik, which is a by law of dash, which is threshing. So dash, let's just bring it up quickly here. Dash is the problem that we have with the juicing is like this. Oh, no, we have a nice picture here. So it says threshing is an av melacha, which is of dash. It is forbidden on Shabbos. In the Mishkan, dash was performed by threading or using flail to beat produce in order to remove the seeds. The problem over there is dash itself is used with a tool, meaning there's a tool to use it. So that's the av melach. As such, the av melach of dash refers to threshing using a utensil designed for that purpose. There's a footnote here. It has to be designed for that purpose. For instance, where this comes down to,
Listen,
Aaron, hold on. The difference is if it comes on to if it has a nutcracker, right? There's things that are tools, utensils used for that specific. That's a problem. If the utensil itself is used for that, it's different than if you're going to use, let's say, a separate utensil. Let's say the back of a knife. So here, threshing that's prohibited, or threading or on the produce. Essentially, dash is the removal of food or liquids from where they were encased. Although this would seem to include most fruits and vegetables that we peel, like bananas, oranges, right? So here's the question of if that's the case, so why is it prohibited? Why is it permitted to peel anything? So why could we peel an orange or a banana, right? That is not the case. The threshing in the Mishkan was done while the produce was still in the field. Most of the fruits and vegetables are peeled just before they are eaten. So that's like I said before. As long as you peel it before you eat it, it's different. It would in fact be rotten if peeled so far in advance. You can't, right? When you peel something, it doesn't last. Since the manner is incomparable, it is not included in the melacha. Moreover, the peels are directly attached and can be considered as part of the fruit itself because it's hugging. Let's say it's not like a loosely held in the shell. So therefore, it's actually part of the fruit itself. Therefore, the removal of the peels is no different than cutting the fruit, which is obviously permitted. One should be careful not to use a peeler on Shabbos, however, to use a knife instead, meaning to use the utensil itself is a problem, which is a peeler. So we don't peel on, let's say if you want to peel an apple on Shabbos, that's prohibited with a peeler, but if you use a knife, it's okay. Again, it has to be done in a way that it's done right before you eat it. You can't prepare it. Okay. So let's just go down to squeezing fruits, which we're talking about over here. Squeezing fruits. The sages were concerned that if people were allowed to squeeze fruit on Shabbos, they would fail to recognize the crucial difference between squeezing grapes and olives, which is forbidden, because that's the whole purpose is to get the juice out of it. It's not one, and all other fruits which are permitted. As such, I think we have to go back a drop. Okay, the tulda. What is the byproduct of threshing of dash? Is mefarik. The common tulda of dash includes removing peas and beans from inedible pods. So if you have an inedible pod, Milking a cow, since the milk is held in the udder, drawing the milk is out is considered dash, is considered thrusting. Crushing, he says, crushing grapes for juice or and olives for oil. The Torah gives seven liquids special status in Jewish law. Since wine and oil are part of the seven, the juice inside grapes and olives are not considered as part of the fruit. So here we have the difference between grapes and olives is because grapes and olives, their fruits are considered separate from the fruit. So the juice is considered separate from the fruit. So by taking the juice out of the fruit, specifically by the olives and the grapes, so that's separating, that's a problem. But separate entity contained within the fruit. Squeezing them out removes them from where they were contained, like the milk out of an udder, and is included in dash. Juice which seeps out of grapes or olives may also not be consumed. You just have to put it to the side, since it may bring one to actually crush the fruit and make more juice. He says like this. Okay, liquids, let's get it. We're not getting into clothing now. Let's stick with the fruit. Squeezing fruit, the sages are concerned. So why, if the only problem is that grape juice and oil out of olives and grapes are because the juices are separate from the fruit, because we made the fruit a special fruit and therefore the juices are separate. So therefore, right, we make what do we make on we make a guffin on the grapes, on the grape juice. So therefore, but orange juice, the juice and the fruit are the same. So why can't we squeeze an orange? He says the sages were concerned that if people were allowed to squeeze fruit, let's say an orange on Shabbos, they would fail to recognize the crucial difference between squeezing grapes and olives, which is forbidden, and all other fruits which are permitted, because in the way other fruits, the juice and the fruit are one. As such, they forbade squeezing any fruits or vegetables which are commonly squeezed for their juice. It means that's why there's a difference in cucumbers and lettuce. Moreover, if juice seeps out from fruit, if juice seeps out from a fruit one intends to squeeze, it is forbidden to drink that juice on Shabbos as well, since that may lead one to actually squeeze the fruit and make more juice. Okay. So we're going to stop here. We'll maybe get back when we get to the rest of the laws here. So brings us to the Kitzur, which says basically, hold on, Aaron, which says basically that any juice that is a juice itself, because we may compare it to olives and grapes, it is forbidden to squeeze, let's say, oranges, etc. Lettuces and cucumbers, in the case with lettuce and cucumbers, there's no intention and there's no angle to drink the liquids that come out of it. You're just trying to get rid of the liquid. So that it goes to the ibud, it goes to waste. That's not a problem, because this is not a biblical, this is a rabbinic concern. So the rabbinic concern only goes to the case where you're looking to drink the juice. Okay, let's just do the footnotes and then Aaron will get to your questions. Okay, so again, it's forbidden to drink for their juice. The ruling is according to Rashi and Tosfos and the Taz. He says, therefore, it's forbidden to squeeze lemons into water. So he says, according to most poskim, it is forbidden to squeeze lemon juice into sugar. Right? The question is sugar like liquid or sugar like a food? So most people say to squeeze sugar is permitted because liquid into food is like food into food, and therefore he quotes the Radvaz Mishnah Berurah that says it's permitted. So lemons into sugar is okay. Lemons into water to make lemon juice is not. Okay. He doesn't get into if you could squeeze lemon into sugar and then add water afterwards. Right? So then I'd be like, first you make the food into food, and then once it's already squeezed and it's allowed eaten, can you add the water to it? And even if it's to suck the juice out, it's forbidden according to most poskim. Si Ramah, the poskim who permit sucking out fruit juice say that it is not the regular way of squeezing, hence it's permitted. Again, when you have the rule is like this: when you have a gezerah, a rabbin. So again, the Jew. Let's just break it down to the law here. The problem of squeezing juice is a gezerah. It's rabbinic. Why is it rabbinic? Because it's biblically prohibited to squeeze olives and grapes. Why is olives and grapes singled out? Because the Torah considers the juices, meaning the liquids of olives and grapes, to be separate from the fruit. There's oil and there's olives. There's grape juice and grapes, or wine and grapes, two separate things. So therefore, it's mefarik. It's like separating, the seeds. So the two separate entities. So therefore, we're concerned that if we're going to allow people to squeeze permitted juices, which would be like orange juice, grapefruit juice, etc., where the juice itself is part of the fruit. So then a person would come and squeeze the olives and the grapes, which is biblically prohibited, because it's only rabbinic and a gezerah. So therefore, there are some opinions that when it's going to when it's not the norm, the gezerah only applies when there's something, and that's the regular way of doing it. Because it's not regular for people to suck juice out of an orange, most people. So therefore, the rabbis wouldn't add the rabbinic prohibition, which is, so to say, a safeguard, in a case that's not the norm. The safeguard is usually applied when something's the regular way to do it. So therefore, there are some posts can say that to suck, say, orange juice out of an orange would be permitted. Okay, let's go further. And you should be definitely careful when you're eating grapes, because that's more direct prohibition, and this also applies to olives, obviously. Number 50, and then we're going to get to Aaron's question about lettuces and cucumbers. So he says you may squeeze it even into an empty container. It doesn't have to go into a mix of something, provided you intend to discard it. It means to squeeze out the lettuce and the cucumbers. It has to be clear in your mind that this is going to be thrown down the sink, what have you. Okay, Aaron, yes, you wanted to ask.
Okay, a couple of questions. Number one is, can you, with a manual tool, make a smoothie? And if you're, and at the same time asking the question, because I know a lot of people like to have a drink, if they meddle their fruit, they beat up the fruit with a tool that's manual at the bottom of their cup, but they leave the whole fruit intact and mix it with alcohol, giving it like with a lemon or a lime. And then my last question is, okay, so you have to peel the fruit to eat it right away. But if you peel it for a kid and he changes his mind, and then he eat it at a meal? He's a kid. I consider a kid under 13, so he's not bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed, so 12 for a girl. So they're under the age, so they don't know all the laws, and but they change their mind because that could happen. You
Okay,
peel.
I get the gist of what you're asking. Basically, okay, that happens all the time. You peel something for the children, and then they run around and they don't eat it. So that's obviously you don't have to throw it out because the intention, but the time when you peeled it was for the intention to eat it right away. And they can. A lot of times they'll eat it and eat it slowly, run around, come back to it. I'm not gonna. I'm not. I can't say I'm 1,000% certain on that, but I can't see what their concern when it comes to the peeling, because again, the most, according to most opinions, the peels of the fruits is not so much. It's not really mifarik. It's really ochel mitoch ochel. It's food from food, and so you're not doing it the regular way, and you're doing it at the table. You're not doing it. Your intention is for the kid to eat it. If the kid doesn't eat, for instance, egg salad, doesn't mean if you look at the strict sense of the law, a person has to make the egg salad and like eat it right away. What's right away mean? You have to like, could you make it before kiddush? Like right away means within a certain setting of time, right? That basically that it's gonna go off. Right? What do you do if you're gonna leave after a while? You leave a peeled apple or orange. It reaches a point that either you're gonna throw it out. I mean, that's usually what you do. To put it in the fridge and then eat it later, that could be a problem. But to let the kid run around and eat it, that seems. I'm confident to say that's okay. Yeah, Rebecca. Then we're gonna go to Barbara.
No, but you
Rebecca,
didn't answer the first question,
what was the
which
first
was,
question?
could you use manual tools to either meddle a fruit, which is beat it up and then pour alcohol over it, which would throw out some juice? And could you, with fruit, you're saying like cucumbers and lettuce, you wouldn't go for the juice, but what if you beat it up and make a drink out of it? Because they make smoothies.
A smoothie, I'm not sure. First of all, again, to use a classic utensil that would be used during the week as its regular way. Obviously, most people make smoothies today with electric blender. So I don't know if you're talking about a hand blender that people can.
Non-electric.
No, no, of course electric is not allowed. I'm saying any utensil doesn't have to be electric. Any utensil that's the way it's being done is prohibited. So for instance, a peeler is not electric.
Okay, but what about a pestle and mortar? So not a mortar, but you have the pestle like thing, and then you put a lime or a lemon down in a cup. Now you mush it, so some juice came out, and then you pour alcohol over it for making a drink.
No, squeezing no, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to squeeze you're not allowed to squeeze a liquid. The only time
Even
you're
if
allowed
you leave the whole fruit in there.
Nothing to do with the whole fruit. You're not allowed to squeeze. You're not allowed to squeeze. You're not allowed to squeeze a fruit to create a liquid on Shabbos. The only time you could squeeze fruit is if you're squeezing the fruit into food. You can't even squeeze a lemon into water. There's someone who said you could squeeze a lemon into sugar. There's no, you cannot squeeze a lemon into alcohol. Here he says squeezing a lemon into a cup of tea is prohibited. But according to Rabbi Farkash, I'm quite certain he writes that you can't even cut lemons into sliced lemons into tea, into hot tea or hot water. You have to have pre lemon juice to go in there. Rebecca.
Hi. Um, I think I missed like the bottom line here, but you were saying you can squeeze a piece of like lemon or lime onto a piece of fish, right?
Fish, I'm assuming, fish is like a salad, I would assume, although it doesn't get absorbed properly like the salad does, meaning like a salad dressing, what have you. But it says food on top of food is allowed. So squeezing a lemon on top of the food, let me get back to you on that because what happens usually with the lemon on top of a piece of salmon is, especially after the salmon is cooked, so the salmon doesn't it doesn't get absorbed into the food. It
Right.
just on
It
top as a
stays on
juice.
the top, right?
I'm not certain about that. I have to check on that.
Okay, and then also, there are some people like if they want to put lemon in their tea or lemon on a liquid or something, they squeeze it into a spoon and then they put the spoon in the liquid. Is that okay?
What's the basis for that?
That this way they're not squeezing the lemon directly into a liquid.
You're not allowed to squeeze a lemon. Squeezing a lemon into liquid is trying to make it easier. Squeezing it into the spoon is more difficult. Squeezing into the spoon is like creating juice. That's for sure prohibited. There's a thing. One would think that if I squeeze it into liquid, it's almost like squeezing
Oh,
it into food. So that makes it easier. But squeeze it into the spoon and put it into the cup is more problematic.
so then you can squeeze it into a liquid?
You cannot squeeze it into tea or if you have pre-squeezed juice, let's say you squeeze it on Friday or
Buy a bottle.
or you buy the bottled juice, whatever, like there's pre you could buy it in the store. That's something else. Now here this is a chart I made. Again, I haven't read this, but I sent it to my rabbi. I haven't to my rav. I haven't run it by him, but this is basically what I put together. Squeezing grapes and olives is Torah prohibited. Squeezing other fruits is rabbinic, like we said. Squeezing into foods to flavor permitted. Conditions apply. It has to be eaten right away. Again, let's check on the fish. Squeezing into liquids forbidden. Using a squeezer or press, Aaron, forbidden. Sucking fruit in the mouth is permitted, but we spoke about what according to some opinions, the Kitzur says not everyone agrees with that. Peeling juicy fruit, like when you peel it, it's like a juicy orange, is permitted if not squeezing intentionally. Cutting a lemon into tea, forbidden. Squeezing pickles, like we said at the end of the sif, not for the juice is permitted. Eating soft food, even if the juice comes out, is permitted. Okay? So
Wait, I
that's
don't get that.
what?
Eating and juice comes out is permitted, or it's permitted or prohibited?
Permitted, because you're
Oh,
not
okay, I got it
juice
now.
it. Okay. All right. You can't control. Okay, Barbara, you're next. Sorry.
Oh, my question is, and maybe this is already answered, but let's say you have lemons and you slice them before Shabbat and you have them there to put into like hot tea or water. Can you do that? It's already cut. It's not.
Hold on, what's some noise coming from somewhere? Um, Hold on. Sharon, you have to mute yourself. There can
Okay.
be
Oh, sorry.
sound coming over. Sorry. The cutting the lemons before, which are oozing juice, and then putting it in, I think that would still be a problem to the liquids.
Okay.
You'd have to create the juice first because the problem is if it's kind of a mix between here and there, it's kind of still containing the juice, right? And you're putting it into liquid. Whereas if you just squeezed it into a receptacle before Shabbos, then that's totally not a problem.
Okay.
Rebecca, you still have your hand up. Is that another question? Rebecca? All right.
No, no, sorry about that.
Yeah, let's go back to the Kitzur. Okay. Interesting law. Loi tekalach isha cholav midadeh letoich hakois. A woman can't squeeze milk from her breast into a cup on Shabbos, which is the question of women preparing the milk before Shabbos or on Shabbos for the baby, or letoich hakadera, or into a bowl, v'teinik espino, and then to nurse the child from that. Al mutar lekaleach me'acholav kedei sheyoiches hatinik es adad v'inoik, but to squeeze a drop so the child should start nursing, that's permitted. So it's basically the questions if you're allowed to pump breast milk on Shabbos for the baby, that's prohibited. Not just using an electric one, but even a manual non-electric one is prohibited on Shabbos. Evidently, there's some idea that the woman's milk could be used as some sort of remedy for a cut or something, and I'm assuming. So that's prohibited on Shabbos unless it's life-threatening. So he says it's something. It's forbidden to sprinkle some of her milk on something that is that for the sake of a remedy where there is no danger involving and no intense pain. He says, sorry, intense pain. Okay, so let's see the footnotes on this. 51. This is according to most Rishonim, milking is part of mefarek, like we said before, just like you can't take the milk out of a cow, and not chas v'shalom comparing, but the same principle of the rule. Okay, 52 is milking into an empty cup is a doraisa. Milking into food is a shavus. So to milk into an empty cup would be biblical. To prepare a bottle on Shabbos is prohibited biblically. To put it into a food, whatever that would be, that could apply also to animal milk, is derabanan. 53, you're not allowed to milk into an empty vessel, even with intention to discard it. See the Chazon Ish. This is actually another problem. The problem is if the woman feels gorged, then she needs to release the milk. So you would think that maybe that's permitted, and you're not tending to feed the child. That's also, according to the Chazon Ish, that's also prohibited. Feed the child with it. Okay, let's see and what about feeding the baby? So even though nursing is mefarek, and the nursing itself is, why is a woman allowed to nurse? If you're not allowed to remove milk, so to say, on Shabbos from the breast, what's the difference if the baby eats it or not? So here he explains that question. Even though nursing is mefarek, which that's the law of mefarek, it's the same law separating any liquids from, again, obviously the liquids is not the same as where it's coming from. So he says, even though nursing is mefarek, it is permitted to nurse a baby on Shabbos, for it is considered an irregular form of mefarek. It's not a regular way, and anything that's a shinoi, he considers that not to be a prohibition on Shabbos. See Bir Halacha, Chelkas Yaakov says that a baby may nurse on Shabbos, for since this is its way of eating, it is not considered mefarek. So there's a machlokes. Basically, hold on, Aaron. If it's considered mifarik, which is the tulda, which is the bylaw of threshing, and in theory, it's prohibition. You're not allowed to milk even to the baby. You're not allowed to nurse the baby. But it's not a regular way of doing it, so therefore it's permitted. According to the Chelkas Yaakov, it's not considered mifarik at all. Says the baby may nurse because since that's its way of eating, it's not considered mefarek. For an adult, it would be considered mefarek. If an adult, a non-essential child, means halachically, once the child stops nursing, so then it was considered mefarek, and then according to him, it would be considered prohibition. So there's actually halachically differently. It means there is such a thing in halacha. It talks about when a child stops nursing after a certain point in their life and wants to start nursing again. So then it's a problem for the woman to do it according to the Chelkas Yaakov, because then it's mefarek. According to maybe the first opinion, who was it? The Bir Halacha, maybe it'd be permitted in the event that's permitted, because then it's because that's not a regular way of mefarek, of separating the food from its source. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, it happened with my son when he was first born. He had trouble latching on, and so we had to pump for a short time for him to get any food. So what do you do at that point?
You have to pump before Shabbos. Again, if it's a sakanus nefashis, if the child, when it comes to this question, the life is the child, the life of the child is in danger. Sakanus nefashis, you're allowed to make a fire on Shabbos. We're talking about in a way a person's trying to prepare in a way where it's not life threatening. If the child's life isn't threatened or endangered, that's another whole situation. I'm talking about in the norm. So the woman would have to prepare it. You could prepare nurse. You could. It doesn't have to be fresh from that day. You could fridge it. You could put it in the fridge. It lasts a few days.
Okay, now my second question is at some point, um, I'm bringing up something that's a little personal, but you're inverted, if you know what I mean. And so you have to pump to bring it out so the baby can latch on. And that's what we had to do. So you could bring it so you could have a nipple.
I know you're saying so. Yeah, it could be that. That's maybe what he said in the first part. Just to get it started, it's allowed a bit. Mishrabi, not done through a machine. Maybe it has
No
to be.
electric, all manual.
I'm saying even a manual pump maybe it'd be better to use by hand.
You mean fingers?
Yeah.
Okay, but
So he said like this: to squeeze out a little milk. This is what you're asking about into the mouth of the baby. This is he brings down the Chai Adam and the Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura, Brura.
I'm going to just say this, that in my community, I'm not talking about Sephardic versus Ashkenaz. I'm just talking about the people that I hang out with. A lot of them tell us when we were younger and had the babies, they told us to buy a manual pump for Shabbos. And now you're telling me something I never knew, that wasn't even an option, really.
It's nothing to do with. I mean, if let me investigate further. Maybe the rabbis have found another psak, but based on what I'm reading now in Law number 13, it's quite simple. It's quite clear.
Well, these weren't rabbis. These were just pregnant women talking to pregnant women.
Okay, I mean, you're saying that they told them. Whoever told them, maybe after let me check more,
Yeah.
more update. But based on what I'm reading over here in Halacha 13, it seems quite simple. You're not allowed to pump on Shabbos, even manually, nothing to do with electricity.
Right.
Barbara.
Sorry to.
No.
Oh, sorry. Can I just interject for a second? I saw in a Me and Mishpacha magazine they have an ad for a pump that somehow gets around the halachic problems and is approved by Rabbanim to be used on Shabbat. So apparently, like with technology, there's some way now that it's possible to use like this specific kind of electric pump on Shabbos for nursing.
It's again, I have to check. I mean, based on the halacha here, the problem is not about electric. The problem is about mefarik.
Okay, this is what I'm going to just make this comment.
It's no different than I mean, they're throwing it in the category of separating like foods from non-foods.
Okay, what I just want to make this comment is one rabbi said, I approve a device to be used on Shabbos, and then they asked the rabbi, would you use such a device that you approved for Shabbos? And he says no, because even though I approve it and it doesn't break the law, it's not in the spirit of Shabbos.
Let's see 56. I think 56 is addressing all our questions, which maybe would explain what Rebecca was talking about and what your wife's friends were talking about. In case the mother is in pain, she may express the milk with a manual breast pump. So there you go. If you're in pain, you can use the manual breast pump, non-electric, even though the milk goes into the pump before being discarded. But you're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to feed the baby with it. You have to throw it out. It'd be like,
No, they were telling us that's how you pump it for a baby. You can't
again, if it's
latch.
if it's a sakana for the baby, something else. And if you have to latch on, we said latching on is not a problem. But to actually pump and prepare a bottle is not allowed on Shabbos, seems like. Here he puts in into footnote number 56 that in a case where the mother's in pain, so then you could use the Avnei Nezer says you could use a non-electric pump, a manual pump, and then throw it out. Barbara. Barbara, you wanted to ask?
Yes, yeah, I was just going to say, now they have things for women who have inverted nipples. It's a thing that they can put over their breast and it helps. They don't have to push. The nipple will come out when the baby starts sucking on the plastic nipple.
Yeah,
So that would take care of that problem.
we used it, but still.
Oh, you still had issues with it?
Well, we used it. it was a bunch of things. They wanted the baby to naturally do it, and we did it. And it's all better to do it all natural. But yeah, we had it. We did all the
Yeah,
tricks.
but in that question of what you want to do, natural, not natural, they have to see if you're allowed to do things on Shabbos because of these questions are not so
But
simple
the
to.
plastic, as she's mentioning, is that forbidden? Because it's a
I said
tool.
no, I don't. That doesn't seem like a tool. It's not a tool. It's not a tool for doing anything wrong. You're creating an opportunity for the child to eat. First of all, it says clearly you're allowed to use your hand even to get the baby started, but the latching on. But the tool that you're talking about is not a tool that is actually doing mefarik. It's just making the setting right for the child to be able to nurse. It's not the same thing. I wanted to ask you, Rebecca, but you said you saw in the mishpacha about the pump. It says it's an electric pump or is it a manual pump?
Um, I'm not sure. I think it might have been electric, and I think it has to be programmed before Shabbos, and then on Shabbos the woman just puts it on, and it, like,
And
I
and,
believe
and,
that.
and and they said just a woman could use it to nurse and create bottles, or it's just in a case where a woman is engorged and in pain, etc., which would fall under footnote number
I don't
two.
know, but I'm actually looking for the ad now. I was gonna post the picture on the as soon as I find it. I'll let you know. As soon as I find it, I'll post it.
All right, now let's go to the next law. Thank you, everyone. Let's go to the next law. Mutter litain shuman korush amay chacham. Okay, are you allowed to put a hardened, let's say fat, a congealed fat on top of a hot food? Which obviously the question is, the heat of the food would melt the congealed fat, so creating a gravy. So afal pishu nimuach, even though it will melt. So it says it's mutter, it's permitted. Hasheleg vabar. This is what we spoke about last week. What about snow, or basically the question of ice? Snow, barad is those they didn't have ice makers, right? So they had snow, or barad is hail. Basically, the question is ice. A maraskinois and b'yadayim. You're not allowed to crush it with your hands on Shabbos. The hainu lishabram lechatichos, to make it into smaller pieces. Kedei she'azoiv u'meimem, that the water should drip out on Shabbos. This is what we spoke last week. You're allowed to put ice into a liquid wine or water to cool off the water and the wine, although the liquid's gonna fall into it. Obviously, combined with the intention isn't to drink the water as much as the intention is to cool off the drink. Be careful in the winter, he says. So those days when they didn't have sinks, so if they had the waters from outside, it could be very cold and frozen. Be careful not to wash your hands with frozen water, because it could ice up, and then you're going to crush it when you're washing your hands, and that's a problem. And if you do wash it with it, don't rub it between your hands, then you're going to crush the ice. That would be crushing. It's permitted to break ice, not for the sake of the ice, but to get to the water underneath the ice. If the water source is outside and it's being protected by or covered by the ice. Well, now here's a question that again, I actually experienced this. I was on a trip in Ukraine years ago when someone was locked out of the bathroom on Shabbos and Nebuch in a lot of pain. So it says, what about to urinate into the snow on Shabbos? Better if you can not to do that. Then he says, one should be careful, also not to urinate on top of mud, or soft dirt. Okay, let's see the laws on this, and then we'll wrap up with questions. Law number 57. Yeah, because then we're going into complicated laws next. Footnote number 57. Okay, law 57 says like this. The congealed fat on top of hot foods. This is permitted only in a klisheni. Again, the food has to be in a second vessel. So if the food is in a first vessel or on the fire, obviously not allowed. You've already put into a klisheni, and we said klisheni, a second vessel doesn't cook. Look into Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 72. Number 58. Even though it melts. The Shulchan Aruch, our custom is to be stringent and not to do this even when the fat will not ever heat up to Yatzaladis, even if the food is in a second vessel, and the congealed fat will not turn into a yatzaledis. Yatzaledis, we said, is that it becomes so hot from the food that the food will be too hot for the hand to touch. And even if it doesn't reach that, but it melts slowly, we're stringent. We are lenient to however when necessary. For example, oneg Shabbos, if your joy of Shabbos is dependent on it, or when guests arrive and that's the only way to eat the food, and you don't have enough food for them, you didn't prepare enough food for them. Okay, number 59. You may not crush snow or hail by hand. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch permits placing congealed fat upon hot foods because the melting is accomplished by itself and not directly by anyone's action. Fat and ice have almost identical halachas in this regard. So he's saying that by hand, you're not allowed to do it, but the ice to melt on its own. So when you're putting the congealed, you're not looking to melt it, you're just putting it on. Here, you're crushing with your hand, so it's a problem. Okay, footnote number 50, number 60, to put ice into liquids, meaning to cool off, not to drink the liquids, but to cool off, to cool the liquids, like ice water. So it says the Mishnah Brura 320:33 rules that crushing ice is forbidden because it is similar to creating water. Means it's boina. It falls under the prohibition of boina, of creation. Another reason it's forbidden is because it might lead one to think it is permissible to squeeze fruit or juice. It means it could fall into the category of turning solids into liquids like juice. Therefore, merely putting an ice cube in a cup of wine or water is permitted because the sages saw no reason to enact such a prohibition. Again, the Vilna Gaon says that it's not regular. Ice water is not the regular way of so to say, getting the liquids out of the water. Although water melts when you put ice into the water of the ice melts. But that's not the intention, and that's not the regular, so therefore it doesn't fall under the prohibition. The rabbis, again, when we're talking about a rabbinic concern, the rabbinic concern is not only in certain cases, it doesn't apply in all cases. Meaning to say, if it's not the intent and it's not what you're looking to do, then the gezerah is not, they don't do a gezerah on a gezerah. That this is, that this is nothing close to juicing, or this is nothing close to building because it's in the liquid, so therefore there's no prohibition. What are we talking about here? To break ice. Oh yeah. So why are you allowed to break ice to get to the water underneath it? Let's say a frozen well is because the water is not derived as a result of the ice. You're not taking the water from the ice. You're taking the water from the water. You're just getting to the water. In order to get to the water, you have to break the ice. Okay. Urinating in snow should be avoided if possible because you're laughing, but I've been in a scenario where someone was in pain waiting for someone to open the bathroom because the snow will surely melt as a direct result of this act. However, if there is a problem about finding another place, it is permissible to urinate in the snow, the Mishnah Brura says. Number 63 is about dirt or mud because the malacha of lush, we said before, right? Making a thick substance, kneading, could kind of fall into that category.
What about your animals? Can your dog pee in the snow?
Yeah, you cannot, you're not telling it to do it. You're not going to be able to prevent a dog from where the dog should urinate. And that applies also just this urinating in the grass. It's also a problem okay. I saw what you sent, Rebecca, and I think you better maybe post it on the group because I'm not sure how to bring it down for everyone here.
But can I say something?
Go ahead.
You mentioned, okay, so you mentioned hard fats and putting them on the food. But according to kosher laws, just using the wording, I'm not doing anything but the wording. Hard fats in kosher law is not allowed to be eaten.
No. When he's not talking about when he says hard fats, he's not talking about the forbidden fats of the animal. We're talking about something like congealed fats, like if you're making the chicken and it turns there's like for instance bachao, whatever it is, like it's
Okay.
permissible congealed substance.
Now the next question is that so I make steaks, I make chickens, and you can't leave them out overnight or they spoil. So you put it in the refrigerator, it now congeals, and then I'm going to put it on the black in the morning, the Israeli black with no handles, nothing. It's going to melt. Is that okay?
Okay, we a few classes ago we dealt with chickens chickens
Steak.
and steaks that have gravy that have congealed when it's admissible. We have to I'll send you a reference for that class. We've that was
I
already.
saw the class, so I was in it. But like
Oh.
you're just saying that we could put it on the food and it can melt.
Yeah, but
But
this is not on the fire. This is on here. You're putting the food on the fire, even if it's on a blech. But here you're talking about you're putting the congealed fat on the food that's in a klisheni.
okay, so it's out of the fire. There's no fire.
Yeah, so like in 58, I think he brings down that our custom is to be stringent, and only in the case of Oneg Shabbos, etc. Even if it's not going to turn Yatzoledes, even if it's not going to turn hot, the liquids are not going to turn hot. It's it's still better not to do it unless that's like your Shabbos is depending on it, etc.
And does butter and margarine count as a fat?
That's a very, very good question. I thought about that when I was preparing the class. If someone could put, let's say, hot corn, and can you put a piece of margarine on top of hot corn? Seemingly, it seems like it's permitted, yes, based on the idea. But this idea of being stringent initially obviously applies to that as well.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, is there anything else before we thank? I saw Rebecca you posted, I didn't see it yet, but I thank you. Thank you all for joining. Again, we're going to get through this chapter slowly. No point in rushing it. And B'ezras Hashem.